Hey everyone. So, before getting into the review itself, it is important to note Horikoshi has been finally given the break he needs, which is 14 weeks. Personally, I would have given him like 21, honestly, but at least he finally has a good enough break to at least try to recover now. But okay. With this chapter though, talking about this chapter itself though, the interesting thing about this chapter is, on its face, we're not really learning anything new or revolutionary about Toga's life. Everything that's shown to us are all things we've more or less known about her, but it is the greater context of that life where the tragedy starts to spring forth. And I will get the obvious part out of the way first. I think regardless of how she turned out, Toga was still born... When you get down to it, Toga was still born with a power that is a danger to both herself and the people around her. But having said that, she was born into the worst kind of world to have that power with, because everyone's goddamn solution to make her normal, at least based upon what I've read in this chapter, was to mask everything about her and who she was, make her a serviceable and in some ways you could say marketable member of society, someone who's like everyone else. But the one thing that's conveniently always, and honestly, I like when Horikoshi does this because it honestly really gets meta about Japanese society as a whole and their expectations for people. But at the same time, the one thing that's always conveniently left omitted from this kind of conversation is with at least with this method of reform, is especially how it applies to the justice system, is how that very rarely, if ever, actually helps the individual. And in Toga's case, like, she was never given the real help she needed. No one fucking helped her. She was never given proper guidance of how best to live her life with her power. Even by her own parents, she was just fed the same bullshit to wear a mask and be forced to try to be like everyone else, or actually her parents went even further than that, said you were an abomination of a child and all that shit. So it's like Toga was just fed always fed this bullshit to wear a mask and be like everyone else, and never allowed to discover who she is. So in both a figurative and literal sense, she's always been wearing a mask her entire life, one that's always different from the last. Yet the one mask she's clinging to the most right now is that of Twice, the one and only person I think she's ever formed a true connection with, to the point that everyone else who tries just feels like they're pitying her, honestly. Which, yeah, there is a little, when you look at her life, there is a little bit of truth to that when you get down to it. But okay, with that said, it does feel like my theory expectation from last week is more or less coming true with this chapter, as we see clones and Sue and Jiro start to kind of get mixed in with the Twice clones, and I imagine having to split her concentration on more than one person is going to cause her to lose control. It's just a matter of how many more Hiro's blood she ends up consuming in the process, because if Jiro and Sue are going to be the only two, then it probably won't have too much of an effect as I think it will. But I think we are still headed for that exact same situation I laid out, where I think Toga is still going to lose absolute control of her power, to the point where she's just going to lose it all. Her entire, like, everything is just going to crumble around her, and she's going to be at like the lowest fucking point imaginable. But by the pretty much end of this fight. And yeah, I do really like the Sue moment we get in this chapter of her laying her heart bare, saying, yeah, she used to think a lot like a lot of the people who did Toga wrong, but right now she and Uraraka are breaking their rules they believed in. They're not fighting her to capture her and lock her away. They just want to have an honest to goodness conversation with Toga, and it's all on it's all on her. It's all on Toga right now as to whether or not she actually is willing to open up to them, because they earnestly, Sue and Ochiko in this chapter do earnestly want to help her, and I do like how I do get a very natural vibe of that. Like none of that really feels like really forced. Like Horikoshi's like trying to force the whole idea. It's like it feels just naturally they just want to help her, and it just feels like a natural progression kind of thing right now. The only problem is, as Toga thoroughly lays out, she's suffered so much that anything Sue or Ochiko say just sounds like them pitying her, like so many others have done, or even just outright, or many others who've rejected her. So it is going to be interesting to see what the conclusion is that she ultimately comes to by the end of this. Of course, this wouldn't be MHA if Horikoshi didn't dive a little into the horror. And yeah, that panel with Clone Sue jumping at Jiro, was quite freaky deaky, to put it lightly. Like, honestly, it's again one of those many moments throughout My Hero Academia where I don't know how likely it is to happen now with how badly his body is breaking down, but it just does make you wonder if Horikoshi ever once considered creating a horror manga, and if he's still maybe considering it in the future. Like, it just seems like something he'd be like perfect for, honestly. Like, horror manga seems like it would be right up his alley, or at the very least like a body horror thing of like zombies and whatnot. Like, that feels like his thing. And yeah, I guess we got to talk about the final page where Toga flashes back to Twice asking if she ever considered or wanted a villain name. And as far as what this might be alluding to or implying, I'm honestly of two minds about this. On one hand, if it would be kind of cool to see what her villain name is something that represents her finally coming into becoming her own person, forming her own identity. But at the same time, I think it would be just as powerful if she rejects the idea of a villain name and pronounces herself as "my name is Himiko Toga" or something like that. And like, either way does work, but for my personal tastes, I'm kind of leaning more in the latter direction, especially considering Toga's whole story is based around the concept of one's identity and not the mask you wear to hide it. And I'm not gonna lie, this is where I'm a little bit worried in terms of Horikoshi's ability to stick this landing, because it is very difficult to resolve a story like this in a way that can be considered satisfying, especially when the person with such an identity crisis is the antagonist. Like, he's done great at getting us to sympathize with Toga's plight and her life and just all of that, and how she has suffered, but it's harder to bring it full circle when you're trying to actually show someone helping the person. Like, again, I'm sure Horikoshi can do it, but there are still questions of the how. And again, the only way I can think of how to make this work is the scenario laid out last chapter, where Toga's entire psyche, her hold on her ability to transform, it just all breaks down, and she just crumbles at pretty much her lowest moment, to where again Ochiko comes in and Ochiko and Sue come in, being the only ones there to really offer her the helping hand she needs. Like, again, that's kind of the only way I can see this happening, but I guess we'll just wait and see. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Analyst, Crunchyroll. Be sure to notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.